In this video, we'll dive into the chilling cases of educators who committed savage crimes, targeting their own students or even parents in acts of betrayal that shatter every sense of safety. Put yourself in the victim's shoes, the terror of a trusted mentor turning predator. These stories aren't just shocking, they're a stark reminder that evil can lurk in the classroom. Pamela Smart, State, New Hampshire, age 58. Pamela Smart, born Pamela Ann Hughes on August 16, 1967, in Coral Gables, Florida, grew up to become one of the most notorious figures in American true crime history. At the time of the crime in 1990, she worked as a media coordinator at Winnicott High School in Hampton, New Hampshire, where she first met the teenage student who would become her lover. On May 1, 1990, her 24-year-old husband, Greg Smart, was shot and killed in their Derry condominium. The scene staged to look like a burglary gone wrong. At just 22 years old, Pamela was accused of orchestrating the murder with her teenage lover, 15-year-old William "Billy" Flynn, and his three friends Patrick, Petey, Randall, Vance, Jr., Latime Jr., and Raymond Fowler. Prosecutors alleged her motives were to continue the affair, avoid a costly divorce, and collect a $140,000 life insurance policy. She was said to have seduced Flynn and threatened to end their relationship unless he killed her husband. The plot unfolded when Flynn, armed with a .38 caliber pistol provided by Latime's father, carried out the shooting with his accomplices. An anonymous tip led investigators to Cecilia Pierce, a young intern who wore a wire and recorded incriminating conversations with Smart. Pamela was arrested on August 1, 1990, in a school parking lot and initially held at the New Hampshire State Prison for Women in Goffstown. Her trial, beginning March 4, 1991, at Rockingham County Superior Court, marked a media milestone as one of the first in the U.S. to be televised live from start to finish, drawing massive attention. Led by Assistant Attorney General Diane Nicolosi, the prosecution portrayed the teenage boys as innocent victims manipulated by a ruthless woman. Smart admitted to the affair, but denied any involvement in the plot, claiming Flynn acted out of jealousy when she tried to end things to save her marriage. Key evidence came from the accomplices' plea deals and testimony, including Flynn's claims of love and Pierce's recordings that contradicted Smart's statements. After 14 days, on March 25, 1991, she was convicted of accomplice to first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and witness tampering. Sentenced to life without parole, though she could have faced the death penalty, but was not charged with it. While in prison, Smart has tutored fellow inmates, earned 2 master's degrees in literature and legal studies from Mercy College through private funding, and advocated for women's prison rights through the National Organization for Women. However, her time behind bars has been marked by hardship. In October 1996, she was severely beaten by 2 inmates, suffering a broken nose and shattered eye socket requiring reconstructive surgery, leading to chronic pain and suicidal thoughts. In 2003, partially nude photos of her appeared in the National Enquirer, resulting in solitary confinement. She later sued and, in 2009, won a settlement for sexual harassment by guards. She participated in writing workshops with Eve Ensler and appeared in a 2003 PBS documentary. While on Oprah in 2010, she maintained her innocence, saying she'd prefer death over life in prison. As of December 2025, Pamela Smart remains incarcerated at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility in Westchester County, New York, having been transferred there in 1993 for security reasons. Her repeated commutation requests have been denied, even after a 2024 video statement where she first acknowledged partial responsibility. Controversy surrounds the fairness of her sentence, as she received life without parole while her accomplices, including Billy Flynn, who was paroled in 2025 after 25 years, were released earlier, fueling debates about her role as the mastermind, despite not pulling the trigger. Appeals, including a federal one in 2004 and a New Hampshire Supreme Court ruling in 2023, have failed, with critics arguing gender bias or media influence skewed justice. Her treatment in prison has also sparked outrage, from the 1996 assault to leaked photos and harassment claims. The case's cultural impact is profound, inspiring books, TV episodes, and notably the 1995 film To Die For, starring Nicole Kidman as a character loosely based on Smart, a portrayal that sensationalized sex, violence, and ambition, often criticized for distorting the facts. Decades later, Pamela Smart's story continues to provoke questions about justice, media power, and redemption. Amy Bishop, State, Alabama. Amy Bishop, later known as Amy Bishop Anderson after marriage, was born on April 24, 1965 in Braintree, Massachusetts. A brilliant but troubled academic, she earned her PhD in neurobiology from Harvard University in 1993, despite facing challenges during her studies. Long before her infamous 2010 rampage, Bishop had a history of violent incidents that raised red flags. On December 6, 1986, at age 21, she shot and killed her 18-year-old brother Seth with their father's shotgun at their family home, claiming she was trying to unload the weapon accidentally. She then fled the scene armed and attempted to carjack a vehicle at a nearby dealership. Initially ruled an accident and with no charges filed, amid suspicions of influence from her politically connected mother, the case was reopened after 2010, leading to a first-degree murder indictment in Massachusetts that was ultimately dropped since she was already serving life in Alabama. In 1993, Bishop and her husband came under investigation for mailing a pipe bomb to a former Harvard colleague, Paul Rosenberg, who had given her poor evaluations. The device never detonated, and no charges were filed. Then, in 2002, she assaulted a woman at an IHOP restaurant over a booster seat dispute, punching her while shouting, "I am Dr. Amy Bishop." She was convicted of assault, placed on probation, but failed to attend anger management classes. On February 12, 2010, as an assistant professor of biology at the University of Alabama in Huntsville, UH, Bishop's long-simmering frustrations boiled over during a routine faculty meeting. Denied tenure in 2009 and facing job loss, she pulled out a 9mm Ruger P95 handgun and methodically shot her colleagues, killing Department Chair Gopi Podila, Professors Maria Ragland Davis and Adriel Johnson, while wounding Joseph Leahy, Stephanie Montixiolo, and Deborah Moriarty, the latter surviving when the gun jammed as Bishop aimed at her. Charged with capital murder and attempted murder, Bishop initially planned an insanity defense. In September 2012, however, she entered a guilty plea, receiving life without parole for capital murder, plus additional consecutive life sentences. Prosecutors had sought the death penalty, but some victims' families strongly opposed it on personal or moral grounds, preferring to avoid a prolonged trial and finding a sense of mercy amid the tragedy. Survivors like Deborah Moriarty left the decision in God's hands, influencing the district attorney to accept the plea deal. In 2015, Bishop issued her first public apology in a handwritten court filing, stating she was terribly sorry for the victims and their families, and my family. This came amid an appeal claiming ineffective counsel and missed deadlines, part of her ongoing efforts to challenge the conviction by alleging mental illness. As of December 2025, Amy Bishop remains incarcerated at Julia Totweiler Prison for Women in Wetumpka, Alabama, with no changes to her sentence. Multiple appeals have been denied, including her most recent in January 2025. Controversy has long surrounded Bishop's mental health and potential insanity defense. Her lawyers describe possible schizophrenia or severe psychological issues, citing prior violent acts like the 2002 assault. In appeals, she argued steroids for allergies caused hallucinations and brain changes leading to loss of control. Critics debate whether this was genuine impairment warranting reduced responsibility or merely a legal tactic, especially since clear warning signs from as far back as 1986 went unaddressed by mental health interventions. Another major point of contention involves the intense pressure of academic tenure and UAH responsibility. Her denial in 2009 stemmed from complaints about poor teaching and difficult interpersonal relations. Debates rage over whether the university ignored student and colleague warnings about her instability, and if the high-stakes tenure system contributed, though most agree it in no way justifies the violence. Decades on, Bishop's case remains a chilling example of overlooked red flags in academia and beyond. Carla Hughes, Estate, Mississippi, age 44. Carla Ann Hughes, born on June 12, 1981, in Greenville, Mississippi, was once seen as a promising educator with a bright future. Adopted at just 6 weeks old by Carl and Linda Hughes, she excelled academically, earning a bachelor's degree from the University of Southern Mississippi and a master's in education from Belhaven College in Jackson. At the time of her arrest, Hughes taught 7th grade language arts at Chastain Middle School in Jackson, Mississippi, a role that placed her in daily contact with vulnerable young teenagers, shaping their minds during a critical developmental stage. It was at this very school that she met fellow teacher and basketball coach Keon Pittman, sparking a secret affair that would expose the dangerous hypocrisy of someone entrusted with the safety and guidance of children. On November 29, 2006, in Ridgeland, Mississippi, 27-year-old Avis Banks, 5 months pregnant and excitedly planning her wedding, was ambushed in her garage shortly after returning home. The attack was savage. She was stabbed multiple times in the face and neck, her throat slashed, and then shot 4 times with the .38 caliber revolver in the leg, chest, and head. Her unborn child died as well. Prosecutors painted a clear picture of jealousy-fueled rage. Hughes had been involved in an extramarital affair with Pittman since August 2006. While Pittman described it as purely sexual, evidence suggested Hughes saw Banks as an obstacle to claiming him fully. Key evidence tied Hughes directly to the crime. The murder weapon belonged to her cousin, who testified she borrowed it. Her shoes matched footprints from kicking in the door, and cell phone records placed her near the scene. Arrested in December 2006, initially on 1 charge, later upgraded to 2 counts of capital murder for both Banks and the fetus, Hughes's downfall was swift. Her October 2009 trial at Madison County Circuit Court drew intense media scrutiny, with prosecutors emphasizing the romantic motive and physical evidence. The defense attempted to shift blame to Pittman, portraying him as a womanizer who might have used Hughes's shoes, but the jury wasn't convinced. Convicted on both capital murder counts, she faced possible execution, but the jury opted against the death penalty, sentencing her instead to 2 consecutive life terms without parole. The Mississippi Supreme Court upheld the convictions, rejecting all 6 raised issues. Hughes has maintained her innocence, with her mother launching a go-get funding campaign in 2016 to hire new lawyers, claiming she was framed and her original counsel lacked criminal experience. Her family, especially Linda Hughes, continues advocating for her. As of December 2025, Carla Hughes remains incarcerated, serving 2 consecutive life sentences without parole. She is currently housed at the Delta Correctional Facility in Greenwood, Mississippi, following a location change in May 2025. The case garnered widespread coverage on CNN, WLBT, and true crime shows like Snapped, Fatal Attraction, American Monster, Forensic Files Now, and the 2023 Southern Fried True Crime podcast episode, The Brutal Murder of Avis Banks. It's often framed as a classic tale of jealousy turning deadly. What makes Hughes's story particularly chilling is the profound betrayal of her role as a teacher. Middle school students, typically 12 to 14 years old, are at an impressionable age, relying on educators not just for knowledge but for moral guidance and safety. Someone capable of such calculated, brutal violence has no place in a classroom, endangering the very environment meant to nurture young minds. Her actions shattered trust in the education system, reminding us how unfit individuals can hide dark impulses behind a facade of respectability. Amy Hebert, estate Louisiana, age 58. Amy Hebert, born around 1967 in Louisiana. By the time of the incident, her marriage was crumbling, marked by a contentious divorce and custody battles that fueled deep resentment. Professionally, Hebert worked as a teacher's aide at a local elementary school in Lockport, Louisiana, assisting in classrooms filled with young children much like her own. On August 6, 2007, in her home in Matthews, Louisiana, Hebert committed an unthinkable act of violence. Using kitchen knives, she took the lives of her own children, 9-year-old daughter Camille and 7-year-old son Braxton, in a frenzied attack. She also slaughtered the family dog before turning the blade on herself in an attempt to kill herself. Miraculously, Hebert survived after emergency surgery. In a harrowing detail that emerged during the trial, Camille had begged, "Mommy, I don't want to die," as her mother attacked. After the killings, Hebert called 911 herself, confessing to the dispatcher what she had done. The motive, as prosecutors would argue, was pure revenge against her ex-husband amid their contentious divorce. She wanted him to suffer, knowing he loved the children more than anything. Signs of her mental instability had surfaced earlier, including marital counseling sessions where she expressed despair. But no one foresaw the catastrophic breakdown. Hebert was arrested shortly after receiving medical treatment in the hospital and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Her trial commenced in May 2009 in Lafourche Parish, Louisiana, where prosecutors painted a picture of premeditated savagery, emphasizing the graphic nature of the wounds and testimony from her ex-husband about their acrimonious split. They argued the killings were deliberate acts of spite, not the result of a momentary lapse. The defense countered by focusing on Hebert's mental health struggles, claiming severe depression from the divorce had rendered her incapable of rational control, supported by witness accounts of her seeking help for relationship issues. However, the jury rejected this insanity plea, finding the evidence of intent overwhelming. On May 19, 2009, she was convicted on both counts of first-degree murder. Although Louisiana law allowed for the death penalty, the jury opted against it, sentencing her instead to 2 consecutive life terms without parole, a decision that spared her execution but ensured lifelong imprisonment. At the heart of the controversy lies Hebert's mental health and the viability of her insanity defense. Her lawyers contended she suffered profound depression triggered by the marital breakdown, leading to a loss of control. She had even sought counseling, as witnesses testified in 2009, yet received no timely intervention. A nurse who treated her post-incident recalled Hebert admitting the killings were to prevent losing the children in custody, blending revenge with psychological distress. Critics argue the prosecution dismissed this too readily, insisting the deliberate stabbings, 30 to 35 wounds per child, proved premeditation unfit for an insanity plea. Public opinion often echoes this divide, with some decrying systemic failures in recognizing depression signs in divorcing women, potentially preventing such horrors. The jury's choice to avoid the death penalty sparked further debate on fairness. Charged with first-degree murder, which carries capital punishment in Louisiana, Hebert escaped execution, prompting outrage from those who viewed the crimes, complete with the children's pleas and the pet's killing, as warranting the ultimate penalty. Others defend the decision, noting gender biases in death sentences. Women are rarely executed, and the consideration of her mental state, underscoring broader inequities in America's capital punishment system. Ethically, the case exemplifies filicide as spousal revenge during divorce, igniting discussions on family courts' roles in child protection. Chelsea Watrous Cook, Estate, Utah, age 39. Chelsea Watrous Cook, born around 1986 and originally named Chelsea Watrous. She married Travis Cook, and the couple had twin children, a boy and a girl, who were just 3 years old at the time of the incident in 2018. As a high school teacher at Skyridge High School in Lehi, Utah, Cook taught teenagers, guiding them through formative years with lessons on health and personal development. The crime that forever altered multiple lives occurred on November 25, 2018, at her ex-husband's apartment in Midvale, Utah. Chelsea texted Travis, pretending to drop off cold medicine for the children, luring him outside to the parking lot. While he was distracted, she slipped into the unlocked apartment where his 26-year-old girlfriend, Lisa Violette Williams, was decorating a Christmas tree with the twins. Confronting Williams, who refused to let her in, Chelsea pulled out a handgun and fired between 2 and 5 shots into her chest and torso, killing her instantly in front of the horrified young children. Travis rushed back inside upon hearing the gunfire, wrestled with Chelsea, suspecting she had another weapon, and held her down until police arrived. The scene was chaotic, with the twins witnessing the violence firsthand, an act that would leave lasting trauma on the innocent bystanders. Investigators quickly pieced together a motive rooted in jealousy and harassment. Williams had endured months of stalking from Chelsea including unwanted phone calls, online messages, and in-person confrontations. Chelsea's obsession stemmed from a desire to eliminate Williams and reunite with Travis, viewing her as an obstacle to reclaiming her family. Arrested at the scene, she was held without bail at Salt Lake County Jail on initial charges of aggravated murder, a first-degree felony, along with burglary for unlawful entry, discharge of a firearm, and 2 misdemeanor counts of domestic violence in the presence of children. The case highlighted the dangers of unresolved post-divorce conflicts, especially when weapons and young kids are involved. The trial unfolded at Utah's 3rd District Court in West Jordan, where in February 2020, Chelsea entered a guilty plea to aggravated murder as part of a deal to avoid the death penalty. Prosecutors emphasized the brutality of the act, its premeditation, and the profound impact on the children, pushing for a severe sentence. They detailed her history of harassment, painting a picture of a calculated attack rather than a spur-of-the-moment lapse. On the defense side, her mother, Lori Watrous, pleaded for leniency during sentencing, describing Chelsea as a loving mom suffering from severe psychiatric distress amid the divorce's emotional toll. Despite these appeals, on June 29, 2020, the judge sentenced her to 34 years to life in prison, with at least 34 years before any parole eligibility. 2 firearm discharge charges were dropped, but 1 was retained to enhance the penalty, ensuring a lengthy incarceration. As of December 2025, Chelsea Watrous Cook, now around 39 years old, continues serving her sentence in a Utah State Prison facility, likely the Utah State Prison or a similar women's correctional center. There have been no recent updates on parole hearings or early release. Given the sentence structure, she won't be eligible until at least 2054, assuming she meets all behavioral and rehabilitative criteria. The case remains a somber reminder of how domestic disputes can escalate fatally, with no public appeals or changes reported in the intervening years. Williams' family has spoken out about the ongoing pain, urging awareness of red flags in post-separation relationships to prevent similar tragedies. In the broader cultural lens, Cook's story serves as a stark example of how jealousy can destroy lives, prompting discussions on mental health support for those navigating bitter breakups. Barbara Opel, State, Washington, age 62. Barbara Marie Opel, born on May 16, 1963, came from a troubled background marked by instability. Her life was chaotic, with frequent evictions due to unpaid rent and periods of homelessness. Opel had 3 children: daughter Heather, born around 1988, a son aged 11, and another daughter aged 7 at the time of the crime in 2001. She worked sporadically as a caregiver for the elderly, with no stable long-term career. Some older sources loosely referred to her as a former teacher or caregiver, but evidence points mainly to caregiving roles. On April 13, 2001, in Everett, Washington, 64-year-old Jerry Dwayne Hyman, a terminally ill cancer patient Opel cared for, was ambushed in his home by 5 teenagers she recruited. They used bats and knives in the attack. The crime scene looked really horrible. They then hid him in a shallow grave about 10 miles away, discovered 8 days later. Opel hid in the basement, shouting encouragement during the attack and later forcing her younger children, ages 7 and 11, to clean up the blood. The teens involved included her 13-year-old daughter Heather, Heather's 17-year-old boyfriend Jeffrey Grote, 14-year-old friends Mariam Oliver and Kyle Boston, and Kyle's 13-year-old cousin, handled as a juvenile. Her motive was pure greed to steal around $40,000 from Hyman's recent home sale proceeds, promising the kids small rewards like cash. Kyle got $220, his cousin about $100, and a car for Grote. Hyman's 89-year-old mother, suffering from Alzheimer's, was left abandoned and near death. Opel and the teenagers were arrested in late April 2001 after the body was found. She denied intending murder, despite telling friends she wished Hyman dead. Her trial began in March 2003 at Snohomish County Superior Court on charges of aggravated first-degree murder, second-degree theft, and second-degree abandonment of a dependent person. Convicted on all counts on April 8, 2003, prosecutors sought the death penalty, but the jury couldn't unanimously agree, as required in Washington at the time, so she received life without parole, plus additional time for the other charges. Her accomplices faced varying sentences. Heather got 22 years, reduced to 20 in 2022, released early. Grote 50 years, Oliver 22 years, Boston 18 years, and the youngest handled as a juvenile, released at age 21. Opel was barred from contact with her children and not housed with them. In 2013, Opel requested permission to correspond with Heather by letter, but it was denied. As of December 2025, she remains serving life without parole at the Washington Corrections Center for Women in Gig Harbor, with no successful appeals or changes. The case sparked intense controversy, particularly over Opel's manipulation of children and teenagers, luring them with petty promises while shouting encouragement during the brutal killing and forcing her young kids to mop up blood. Many view the teens, especially Heather, who endured prior abuse with ignored CPS reports, as victims of an adult predator, highlighted in the Deadly Women episode Bloodlines, as a stark example of maternal depravity. Debates raged over trying most juveniles as adults, with Heather's lawyer arguing she had no chance, due to lifelong maternal abuse and state failures in child protection. Some felt Opel's life sentence was too lenient given the lives she destroyed, while others noted the jury's reluctance to execute a woman. Washington had never done so. Her permanent no-contact order with her children, including the denied 2013 request, dismissed with the grim remark that their last close contact ended in death, fueled discussions on prisoner rights versus victim protection. Ultimately, the tragedy exposed systemic failures in child protective services, as the Opel's unstable history went unaddressed, allowing a vulnerable family to spiral into unimaginable violence. Dana Rivers, Estate, California, age 73. Dana Rivers, born in 1955 as David Chester Warfield, emerged as a prominent transgender advocate in the United States during the 1990s, becoming one of the first publicly transgender individuals in several community milestones. The case that shattered her public image unfolded on November 11, 2016, in Oakland, California, at a home on Dunbar Drive. Rivers is accused of murdering Charlotte Reed, 56, her wife Patricia Wright, 57, and their adopted son Benny Dimbu Wright, 19. The victims, a lesbian couple and their son, were brutally attacked, stabbed multiple times and shot with a firearm. Rivers was arrested at the scene, covered in the victim's blood. With police responding to reports of gunshots and a house fire, she sustained minor injuries. Prosecutors described the killings as premeditated, labeling Rivers a vengeful enforcer, possibly tied to her motorcycle club affiliations. The motive stemmed from personal disputes within the LGBTQ community, including prior arguments between Rivers and Reed over transgender issues and exclusionary policies in lesbian spaces. This intra-community conflict added layers of complexity, with some viewing it as a potential hate crime fueled by ideological clashes. Arrested immediately on November 11, 2016, Rivers was initially held at Santa Rita Jail. The trial faced numerous delays due to the COVID-19 pandemic and evaluations of her mental competency. Proceedings finally advanced in November 2022, where she was convicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder, along with enhancements for using deadly weapons and multiple victims. Prosecutors portrayed her as a deliberate killer, supported by blood evidence and weapons found at the scene. The defense argued insanity, claiming Rivers was in a state of severe mental distress, but this was rejected in 2023 when the court deemed her competent. Requests for a new trial were denied, and in June 2023, an Alameda County Superior Court judge sentenced her to life without parole. No successful appeals have been recorded through 2025, despite some advocacy from transgender rights groups questioning the handling of her case. Post-conviction, Rivers had engaged in limited advocacy for transgender prisoner rights before her sentencing, but no notable activities have been reported since. Her incarceration has itself become a flashpoint, housed in a women's prison in California. Likely the Central California Women's Facility, due to her gender identity. This placement has drawn criticism from groups like the Women's Liberation Front, who argue it endangers female inmates and raises questions about prison policies for transgender individuals. As of December 2025, no updates indicate changes to her sentence or parole eligibility, and debates continue in feminist and LGBTQ circles about the implications for gender-based housing in corrections. The case has received extensive media coverage, appearing in outlets like the Berkeley Scanner, Los Angeles Times, Mercury News, KRN4, New York Post, Spiked, and Substack posts by journalists Julie Bindel and Kara Dansky. It's often discussed in the context of transgender rights, violence within the LGBTQ community, and broader debates on gender ideology in true crime podcasts and articles. The murders highlighted fractures in queer activism, with some narratives framing Rivers as a symbol of unchecked aggression, while others caution against stigmatizing transgender people. This coverage has amplified cultural conversations around hate crimes, prison reform, and the intersections of gender identity and violence, ensuring the story remains a contentious topic years after the conviction. In the end, these harrowing stories remind us that even those entrusted with shaping young minds can harbor unimaginable darkness, driven by jealousy, rage, or desperation. They underscore the fragility of trust in educators and the devastating ripple effects of unchecked personal turmoil on families and communities. As society grapples with justice served through life sentences, we must prioritize mental health support, vigilant oversight in schools, and stronger safeguards for vulnerable children. Ultimately, these tragedies call for compassion, prevention, and a commitment to healing wounds that scar generations. Let them serve as a stark warning: vigilance saves lives.